T. Roy's most notorious bodies out of Chicago. We don't know who T. Roy is, man. He is an old block savage. Small but a big dog in old block, and also Kevon's best friend. They was a dynamic duo. You feel me? So we finna get into this video.
With a friend to the corner store near 62nd and St. Lawrence when a silver two-door car would pull up next to them. Someone leaned out the window, opening fire, hitting Dale several times. This was a brutal and senseless slaying, but even more brutal was the fact that in the aftermath, someone would take a graphic picture of Dale's body laying on the sidewalk. It's moments like this that really drive home just how dark life in the Chicago streets can really be. After the shooting, and after being pictured on the ground, Dale was taken to the Stroger Hospital where he was pronounced dead. About half an hour later, police would report claims that Dale was shot a total of 12
be cracking
times.
in the rack,
According
bro.
to Dale's friends and family, he wasn't really a gang member and would rather spend time at a youth center than on the streets. Dale's family had actually moved away from the Washington Park and Woodlawn area to the Chapman neighborhood about 3 miles south. But unfortunately, Dale would still come back to his old stomping grounds to hang out with his friends.
And that's the thing, like they say he wasn't a gang member, but it's kind of like you guilty by association. You get caught hanging with him. You get, that's how it be in the streets, which is sad, but that's how it be.
Some of whom were indeed affiliated with the sets in the area that were enemies of O-Block. This included STL on St. Lawrence Avenue and EBT on Eberhart on 64th and Jarrow City on 62nd, as well as crews within them like FYB and FBG. In the years following Dale's death, many of these people would tweet about Dale being an innocent civilian who had nothing to do with any gang rivalries in the area. However, Dale was seemingly around real gang members who had many enemies in the streets. One video of Dale, seemingly taken within a day of his murder, would even circulate online. Dale would be seen in pictures throwing up gang signs, suggesting that he himself had already been sucked into the gangbanging lifestyle, and seemingly his connection to gangs would come from family ties, as Dale's big brother was a known St. Lawrence member who went by the name Main Main. Main Main was even seemingly mentioned in the police reports regarding the murder of O.D. Perry, with O.D.'s mother stating that she had heard that a man called Main Main...
You don't know who O.D. Perry is? He was another big dog in O-Block. They the reason why, he's the reason why O-Block is named O-Block, after him.
was behind O.D.'s murder. Dale's killer has never been caught, but there have been several factions and suspects who have been rumored to have been behind this murder. For example, in 2012, rapper billionaire Black's brother Richie Jerk would seemingly implicate the Lamron set for killing Dale. But another popular suspect in the murder has been D. Rose, who belonged to the 600 set who were very close to O-Block themselves. However, O-Block's own T. Roy has also been suspected of being involved in Dale's murder, with the implication that this may well have been the first of as many as 10 murders that he had committed for his gang. Although some have claimed that T. Roy could have been involved, as he may well have been locked up at the time of the murder. However, recently, this case received a crucial update during the recent trial relating to the murder of FBG Duck, when one of the cooperators, allegedly FBG Butter, would tell investigators that Dale had indeed been killed by T. Roy and D. Rose. While the case was never definitively solved, the willingness of federal prosecutors to name T. Roy...
See, I ain't know that. I didn't know that at all. That is crazy.
as a killer in paperwork speaks volumes. However, this was only the first of many rumored murders which T. Roy was...
Like I said, this is all speculation.
The next one would see him allegedly being assisted by his best friend, infamous killer and rapper from O-Block, King Von. About 5 months after the murder of Dale, on the 28th of April 2012, at around 9:30 p.m, a 23-year-old man called Doc, or King Doc, real name Marlon Monroe, was walking near 63rd and St. Lawrence, the heart of STL's territory, when somebody opened fire as he was in front of the corner store, striking him once in the chest. Doc would then try to escape his attackers across the road through a patch of tall weeds in an empty lot in the 6300 block of St. Lawrence, where he would ultimately succumb to his injuries, passing away on the spot. However, when police would come to investigate the reports of shots fired, they couldn't see Doc laying there in the tall weeds, and would leave him there. And it wasn't until Doc's relative, a teenage boy named Modell McCambry, would go through that empty lot on his way home hours later that he would actually stumble upon Doc's body. According to Doc's family, he had been going through a rough patch in his life and had recently been freed after doing a prison bit, which he was seemingly also celebrating on his social media. Doc had only...
Just imagine, bro, you walking to the crib or anything and you find your cousin laying there deceased. Like, you know what that would do to me or a person, bro? Like, that's crazy, bro.
recently begun getting his life together, getting
like
his
the fact that the police come find
now
him.
He
You know
how
ironic that his cousin woke and he found him.
In fact, the night he was killed, Doc had actually been at his aunt's property doing some maintenance, shortly before his life was cut short. However, Doc was also allegedly gang affiliated, particularly with the EBT set named after Eberhart Avenue, who were close with several other gang sets in the area, including STL, Gyro City, and MOB. People seemingly affiliated with these sets would also mourn Doc's death on their social media, some of them even seemingly alluding to knowing exactly who had killed Doc and vowing revenge. The police would also monitor on social media that members of these gangs held Lamron and Brick City, which is an older name for 600's hood, responsible for Doc's murder. But on the other hand, in 2013, MOB Beans would tweet how he was about to do his ops like Wick, the former name of O-Block, had done to Doc. Now, despite there not being many hard facts that are publicly known about the suspect, online Chiracologists on Reddit who follow the Chicago drill scene closely have theorized that T. Roy may well be the most likely culprit.
Like I said, these are all speculation.
This is seemingly based on factors like T. Roy being known for aiming to the chest and for killing affiliates that weren't directly involved in the many beefs that O-Block had. There are also claims that EBT had been talking about catching T. Roy on Facebook immediately following the death of Doc, but ultimately this murder remained unsolved, despite many people believing that this killing may well have been carried out by a group of shooters from O-Block, which included both King Von and T. Roy. Interestingly, King Von would start a Twitter account in the months that followed this murder, where he would seemingly tweet openly about his friendship with T. Roy and their—
Told you. Look, Phineas and Ferb is me and T. Roy. T. Roy know what we finna do today.
activities in the streets together, saying that they shoot people like it's nothing, and tweeting openly that he with this sort of thing casually being tweeted by Von and T. Roy, it's no surprise then that within a matter of months they would both be suspected.
Like I said, it's still all speculation.
In the early morning hours of August the 8th, 2012, a 28-year-old man named Terrell Joshua, known on the streets as Dirty Rel, was at the corner of 56th and Wabash. Here, he was shot several times. The police would arrive to the scene soon after, finding Rel motionless on the ground, where he was then taken to hospital and pronounced dead around 4 a.m. Like Doc, Rel was affiliated with some of the gangs in this area, such as STL and Gyro City, and members of these gangs would mourn his death on social media after his passing. But Rel was even older than Doc, and he had seemingly moved away from this area in Chicago some years ago to the city of Peoria, around 2.5 hours drive from where he was killed. It's unclear why Rel was in Chicago the night of his murder, or exactly who killed him, but once again, T. Roy's name would become attached to the case, as would King Von's, who would ominously post the previous night how there was a smell of homicide in the air, implying that Von may well have been driving around looking for Opps that very night, and then posting the next night, within hours of Rel being shot, showing that Von was indeed awake at the time of the murder. Once again, also D. Rose from 600, who was known to slide with O-Block, was connected to this case as part of a theory in the legendary Chirac wiki, with it believing that D. Rode himself assisted in the murder. Now, while it's not clear exactly who shot Rel, it seems that his friends thought that this murder was indeed done by O-Block, because the very next night they would exact their revenge. That night, on the 8th of August, an O-Block member by the name of White or Whitey, real name Tony Dunn, was hanging out with King Von around O-Block, where they were celebrating Von's upcoming birthday. Von would enter a store near the apartment complex, while Whitey would wait outside. Unfortunately, it was there when Whitey was shot to death by a member of Gyro City called 50 Shot, who was then caught by the police right near the scene of the murder, even shooting it out with the cops. It would take over 10 years for justice to finally be delivered in this case, as in 2023, 50 Shot would finally be sentenced for the murder of White and two attempted murders of the police officers who arrested him, with him receiving a whopping
50 Shots was sentenced to 115 years in prison for killing. 10 years later, he got sentenced to 115 years. It's crazy.
115-year sentence. As I've discussed in length in my video, King Von, Rap's first serial killer, this was a moment that would make King Von yearn for revenge. After the death of White, Von begun a determined sliding campaign with the goal of killing all of O-Block's ops. And Von would later rap on his song Demon, that it was literally witnessing Whitey's murder that turned him into a demon, motivating him to commit numerous murders. And as Von would often discuss, his number one partner during this campaign to kill was his best friend, T. Roy. And soon, they would seemingly catch another body together, this time with a dark connection to the first man that Von and the second that T. Roy had allegedly killed. About 2 months after the death of Dirty Rel and Whitey, Modell McCambry, who had found his relative Doc dead earlier that year, was walking with his friends on the street in STL's territory. A gunman would approach them on foot and begin shooting at Modell. At this point, his cousin Miles Turner would heroically attempt to shield Modell with his own body, also ending up getting shot numerous times. Miles would miraculously end up surviving the incident despite being confined to a wheelchair, as was seen in a media piece about him where he met former governor of Illinois Pat Quinn to talk about surviving gang violence. Unfortunately, despite his heroic attempts to shield his cousin, Modell would end up losing his life. The police would soon determine that the shooting had indeed been gang-related as part of the ongoing rivalry between O-Block, or Wick City, and STL, which Modell was allegedly affiliated with. This time, police were even able to figure out 2 specific suspects, one of these being King Von, real name Davon Bennett, who they determined to be the shooter, accompanied by T-Roy, who had allegedly been at the scene with Von. Unfortunately, due to many witnesses refusing to speak with the investigators out of fear of retaliation, both Von and T-Roy would ultimately not be charged for this murder. They would continue to torment their ops on social media, seemingly bragging openly about their victims, with Von literally tweeting the day after the murder that him and T-Roy just can't stop killing, and telling their Twitter followers,
he said, me and T-Roy got a problem, we just can't stop doing our thingy thing. And all that.
Stay tuned and find out.
That's it. I'm sorry for laughing.
However, after Von's death in 2020, detectives would finally get witnesses to come forward, and the case was ultimately closed, with Von determined to have been the shooter. But the next murder that Von and T-Roy were suspected of being involved in was the killing of another high-profile shooter in a rival Chicago gang, and yet another killing that's been shrouded in mystery and theories for years now. In the morning of November the 8th, 2012, not even a month after the murder of Modell, another STL member would be found in critical condition in the Wrightwood neighborhood in the far southwest side of Chicago. This time, it was a 17-year-old Rodney Stewart, better known in the streets as Boss Trell from STL, who had been shot once in the back of the head and was found laying dead in a gangway with a Glock handgun tucked underneath his body. Only a few hours before being found, Boss Trell had made a tweet stating that he was going back to sleep. So if he was going back to bed, how did he end up shot outside next to houses that he seemingly had no connection to? This shooting was actually heard by several residents in the area, but only a few had seen anything. But one of these witnesses had spotted a thin-built man with an average height wearing a white sweater running away from the scene. Another witness had seen a black van driving away from the scene, as well as another man wearing a hoodie, carrying a backpack, and running while yelling for help. While the police were trying to piece together what had happened from these tiny tidbits of information, Boss Trell had been rushed to hospital, where he would continue to fight for his life. Later that morning, Boss Trell's friend began reacting to the news of him being in hospital, and soon FBG Cash would post a picture on Twitter of himself holding Boss Trell's hand. And he would also post several tweets that sounded like threats and antagonism towards the people that he believed had shot Boss Trell, where he said that he was about to go nuts and turn the streets into a gun range. Only a few minutes later, T-Roy and King Von would begin a tweet storm of their own, where they both heartlessly mocked Boss Trell, as well as seemingly implying that they had something to do with his shooting, with T-Roy tweeting, "Man down," Von tweeting, "LOL, the struggle." T-Roy would even tweet, "F him, die slow," and going on to reference the infamous true crime reality show, First 48, suggesting that he had just First 48'd his victim. King Von would then follow up with another heartless tweet saying that his ops aren't dying on time, a reference to Boss Trell's status in hospital. And then T-Roy himself would reference the situation mockingly, tweeting, "No Trell, stay alive." Unfortunately, later that night, Boss Trell would pass away from his injuries. But still, even the next day, King Von would continue to taunt STL, claiming that STL really stood for steady taking losses, as well as referencing Boss Trell directly, tweeting, "He ain't a boss to him." Tragically, it would later be reported that Boss Trell seemingly knew that he was in danger in Chicago, and that he'd even had plans to move to Iowa, where he had a lead on a new job. In fact, the very night he shot, he had already had a bus ticket bought to get out of town. His fears were very much warranted, because Boss Trell himself was rumored to be a known shooter, with many believing that he had killed for his gang too, particularly Sherroyd from O-Block. That same reporting would then make claims that many around Trell, including his girlfriend, as well as the detectives investigating the death, actually knew who'd done it, but without credible witnesses.
And that's the thing, bro. Like, if you make yourself a known, like, shooter and to your oppositions or your enemies, bro, like, you're gonna be hunted, bro. Like, this is just how I go in the streets, bro. Like, you put yourself out there as one of, the top shooters, and you're gonna be one of the main targets, bro. To get, they got to get you up out of there. Like, it's sad, but bro, this is just how the streets go, man. Like, we got to do better.
Including Trell's girlfriend, who said that she didn't feel comfortable talking about people she thought were involved, they ultimately couldn't bring any charges. But given that Von and T-Roy were heavily implying their involvement in the murder on social media, it would be no surprise that the internet would also begin to think they must have had something to do with the murder. Images would even circulate of a photo that T-Roy shared, showing his Timberland boots covered in blood, with the implication that the blood may well have belonged to Boss Trell. These rumors were later further fueled by people close to O-Block and STL, who would seemingly admit that Von and T-Roy were those responsible.
Von allegedly killed Trell, him and T-Roy. Only the streets know, and only the people who did it know. So that's why.
And that's the crazy part. And the motherfuckers be knowing who in the streets who do though. So.
He got more than 5. He caught that quick. He caught, nigga. He was listen to his raps. Like, he was really like telling y'all what he was doing, and like how he go, like he'd change his shoes. He catching before he even hit school.
Yep.
Like he caught Trail, some goofy ass On my podcast telling me he ain't, boy, on God, on OD Soul. Boss Trail is folks' work. Like, stop that. Like, that was folks' work. He did that.
People would point out that Von and T-Roy had seemingly been driving around Chicago the night leading up to the morning that Trail was found. However, there were also other suspects from O-Block, particularly next year in 2013, after a well-respected O-Block member called J Money, real name Jerome Wood, was ultimately killed. Immediately following that murder, friends of Boss Trail would tweet saying RIP to Boss Trail, insinuating that it may have been J Money who had been the triggerman, with them celebrating his passing. Then, the following year, in 2014, STL member FBG Young would post a tweet that seemingly implied that Boss Trail had died due to some kind of betrayal taking place. Then, in 2015, another good friend of Boss Trail, rapper FBG Duck, who was also Boss Trail's cousin, would rap in his song My Homies that it was actually a girl who had betrayed Trail and caused his death.
I heard it was a girl that supposedly set him up, and that's why you can't trust these girls, bro. That's why you can't trust them, bro. Like, especially you in the streets, bro. It's just like, so you gotta worry about your enemies. You gotta worry about the police. Then you gotta worry about you getting like a girl, bro. You think that'd be the last thing that'll happen to you, a solid girl, but that's why you get you one, or just leave them alone, period, bro. Just find you one, bro, that's solid, and just stay with her. But bro, yeah, you can't trust them, bro. Like, they get you whacked quick, bro, and it's sad.
With the earlier reporting of Boss Trail's aunt blaming his girlfriend for not cooperating with the police. The rumour regarding a girl setting Boss Trail up would eventually develop into a completely new direction. According to this rumour, Trail used to leave his guns at a girl's house, but that girl had a brother who ended up taking the gun. This brother was part of a gang called Quiet Money, who apparently controlled the area around where Boss Trail was found shot. On the morning of his death, he had supposedly gone to get a gun back from the brother, but this would ultimately wind up with him getting killed, with this story being substantiated by people who were close to the situation, such as EBT-BG.
Trail. BT, the Opps didn't do that. They didn't do that. STL didn't get no get back for BT. But anyway, he got wrapped up in some trying to go get his pipe back that his brother then took from him. Like I say, everybody took guns from STL.
Did he really take it? If he leaving guns at his shorty house, did her brother really take it from him? Like, it's dude house. Like,
this rumor hasn't been proven to be true either, and the murder of Boss Trail is still an open case. It's important to mention that there's never been
we
any
don't know
definitive
what really
proof
happened.
exactly
This is
who
all
was the girl that
speculation.
supposedly set Boss Trail up, and what exactly was her role in this supposed setup. Many have naturally accused Boss Trail's supposed girlfriend, but there have been multiple women in his life, which was something his supposed girlfriend had also implied. So we may never know who did it, but regardless of exactly who it was, if the tweets were anything to go by, to Von and T-Roy, the murder and death of their rivals was just an everyday activity, and with that in mind, it would only be a matter of time before they indeed killed again. On the 19th of November 2012, about 10 days after Boss Trail had passed, a man in his 30s named James Holman was standing in front of his apartment when four men reportedly exited a nearby apartment building and approached him, at least one of them opening fire, hitting Holman in his forearm and chest, with these wounds later proving fatal when he was rushed to hospital. The shooting happened in the 6000 block of South Michigan Avenue, which is in the heart of 600's hood. This immediately raised the question, who, other than people affiliated with 600, would exit a building in that area before immediately shooting somebody? This question particularly arises when you know the fact that Holman was an alleged member of the Gangster Disciples, apparently being better known in the streets as Lil James or Baby J, with him also allegedly having ties to the MOB set who 600 and their affiliates such as O-Block were in a bitter feud with. Moreover, the deadly duo King Von and T-Roy would once again begin their tradition of seemingly implicating themselves in the murder on social media, with Von clowning somebody only 20 minutes after Lil James was shot, continuing later that night by tweeting that he was killing GDs often, followed by a now infamous deleted tweet where Von outright claimed that he had killed 5 GDs and shot 10. Meanwhile, T-Roy would seemingly clarify who the O-Blockians were clowning by asking if anybody had gotten shot yesterday. Von would also seemingly match the description of the shooter in the police incident report.
Those who said that King Von was mentioned in the report put out the rumor in the Von video a year ago. I only said the description in the report that matched Von's description.
Although this likely doesn't prove much given his rather average height and weight. However, once again, there would also be other suspects, including members of 600 such as Bitedown, with rumours circulating of 3 murders that he was suspected of committing. Another suspect that was considered was M-Thing, the brother of prominent 600 member D-Thang. But whoever may have been responsible for James's death, the fact is King Von was arrested only a few days after for unlawful use of a weapon. Von would end up behind bars for over a year, leaving his best friend T-Roy lone in the streets of Chirac to continue waging war against his ops. And allegedly, while Von was gone, T-Roy would end up committing several more murders before he himself would ultimately end up losing his life. T-Roy's next alleged murder victim was somewhat more mysterious than the others, who was so far all from rival sets near O Block. This man was a 27-year-old called Stunner, real name Frederick Taylor. Stunner belonged to a gang called TTB, or Train to Blow, which also went by the name Suwoo and FOA, meaning family overall. This set hailed from the so-called low end on the north side of Washington Park, near the shores of Lake Michigan, particularly from the public housing projects on Lake Park Avenue between 39th and 40th Street. As a 27-year-old, Stunner was already a Chicago OG who apparently had a long history in the streets, and he had also tried to make it as a rapper, with songs circulating in early 2011 and possibly even earlier, with his crew Street Gang, which included other rappers from TTB and FOA. From his music and social media, it's clear that Stunner had friends and enemies all over Chicago, as he would affiliate with other sets such as Rec City all the way in the west side, whilst also dissing their ops such as Face World and BOC or BOCO, both of whom had their hoods near Rec City. Street Gang was also seemingly dissing O Block's close affiliate Lamron, as well as Chief Keef and his GBE crew that O Block at the time was still friendly with. And although far away from O Block, TTB were also close with many of O Block's enemies, including 051 Young Money and Jaro City. So they were therefore beefing with O Block and its affiliates like 600 by association, as seen in tweets by prominent member TTB Nez. And then, around the 9th of June 2013, at around 1 AM, Stunner was in traffic with friends on the busy Dan Ryan Expressway. They were driving southbound on a slip ramp between the 71st and 75th Streets, when somebody would pull up, shooting up their car, hitting Stunner and a woman, whilst missing a third person who could later be seen speaking with the police on the side of the road. Stunner and the woman would be taken to a hospital where he was unfortunately pronounced dead. The following day, the news of Stunner's passing would reach his friends and family. However, that's not all they would post, because already that same day, one of the most well-known members of his set, TTB Nez, would tweet an ominous message, implying that O Block, aka Wick City, had been behind the hit and promising revenge. Meanwhile, T-Roy was seemingly gone from Twitter for several days following the shooting until he would return on the 13th. Moreover, FBG Dutchie from STL would tweet to T-Roy that day telling him to bail out next time, implying that T-Roy had been in jail, which might have been related to the shooting of Stunner. Then, in the coming months, other TTB members would repeat a similar message as Nez, this time directly saying that it was O Block that had killed Stunner, as well as dissing O Block's affiliates such as Lamron, 300, and 600. They would also diss and threaten specific O Block members such as senior member Boss Top by quoting the classic Billionaire Black and FBG Duck O Block diss song, Exposed, where Billionaire Black raps he'll catch Boss Top coming out of O Block. And of course, he would diss T-Roy with tweets referencing his height and saying that his casket will be little, and when they catch him, they're going to burn his face. Therefore, it's not a surprise that many people online have been convinced that it was O Block that killed Stunner. Particularly, two members have been thought to have been behind the hit, T-Roy and Boss Money, who supposedly had a personal beef with Stunner before his death. However, it was one particular video that got many convinced that it must have been T-Roy, a video that's actually T-Roy's last video ever, where he's seen toting a gun and saying that Opps cannot do him like Lil Mark and Stunner.
They would not Stunner me. No, I keep that 33. But this ain't a 33.
Whoever the killer from O Block may have been, TTB would allegedly respond with strong force, because in 2015, one of the members would tweet saying that after Stunner died, TTB had been up for an entire week trying to avenge his death. Ultimately, even if T-Roy was the killer of Stunner, he would evade his ops for several years, continuing to cause carnage for his enemies and apparently even innocent civilians.
Damn.
A few months after the death of Stunner, T-Roy would allegedly get active again, this time with particularly tragic consequences. On the morning of September the 17th, 2013, a local elderly man named Billy Sargent was sitting at a bus shelter near 61st and King Drive, a location known for being a hotspot for violence, as it borders the two neighborhoods, Washington Park, in this case known as the territory of O Block affiliated sets 600 and Front Street, as well as West Woodlawn, where rival sets like Jaro City and Taekwon World would stay. While sitting at the bus stop, like he used to do every morning, someone would approach and start shooting, hitting Billy several times. 67-year-old Billy Sargent would be taken to a hospital where he would unfortunately be pronounced dead. His friend would later give a video interview to the Chicago Tribune, remembering his dear old friend.
He was the last person on earth that should ever get shot.
Was it?
For sitting on the corner. All the old gangster boys, they knew him. This was somebody that was just, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I don't know.
That's a shame, man. Oh, horrible, man. Listen, what? Do you know right now?
Like, was it somebody? Was he really the target, or was somebody just like there with him that they seen and he just happened to get hit or something? Because I just can't. I don't know.
I have seen yellow tape in this neighborhood with my kids going to the park at least 15 to 20 times this summer. I'm saying,
It be cracking in
I
Chicago,
don't want to
bro.
cut my roots, but when I bring my grandkids down here to go in the
It
park,
ain't called a Chirac for a reason.
Question, not
For
question,
no
answer.
reason.
I came out of that store 3 weeks ago. They stopped the bus right here and all the police. Somebody shot at a moving bus right here, shot somebody in the hand. This was 3 weeks ago. It's in the police records. Cause we stood over there and asked the police, like, you know, what happened? And I told my retired parole agent, so they said, man, somebody shot the bus. So that's what it's like now, you know.
Police would tell the media that the shooter may have actually been shooting at a rival gang
Yeah,
member.
I'm gonna say,
And after
'cause
the
it
shooting,
is-
witnesses
yeah.
would report the shooter running away near the scene, apparently his description matching that of a 14 to 15-year-old boy, who was apparently eventually captured and interviewed, but ultimately released without charges as he had an alibi. Interestingly, the police would also arrest T. Roy the very next day, accusing him of criminal trespassing,
Free T.
along
Roy,
with
E-Dog,
E-Dog
and
and BJ
BJ.
from O-Block. Although the charge is seemingly completely unrelated to the shooting of Sergeant, the timing is
Yeah, bro,
peculiar
that's
and has
crazy.
likely contributed to many of the rumors that T. Roy may have well been the shooter, given particularly that the shooter apparently appeared smaller than the average adult. But another factor pointing towards O-Block being responsible is the fact that this shooting took place only a few weeks after the murder of J Money, who was one of their most beloved members,
Yep.
and the fact that one of the people who was
R.I.P. J
allegedly
Money,
present
man.
when J Money was killed was the infamous female assassin KI from
Aye.
STL, who would even tweet afterwards about how someone had just tried to kill her but missed, with it being plausible that this indeed could have been T. Roy shooting at KI,
So they-
and ultimately
yeah,
killing
unless-
an innocent bystander in the process. Moreover, it seems that O-Block may well have been hunting KI again a few months later, because on the 1st of November, a 32-year-old woman was shot in the leg as she walked in the 6300 block of South Vernon Avenue, the territory of STL, around 12:23 p.m. Shortly before 2 p.m, FBG Dutchie would tweet how O-Block had come through shooting again, but had shot an innocent junkie. And then the next day, KI would tweet saying that O-Block had tried to shoot her, but missed, hitting someone else. And then a few weeks later, Dutchie would specify that that shooting had indeed happened on Vernon. Then, some months later, KI would even tweet threatening T. Roy, saying that if he came to Vernon, he would end up dead. Ultimately, KI would end up being killed herself, with the prime suspect being King Von. However, before that would happen, there would be one more murder which T. Roy and Von were rumoured to have been involved in, or at least present for.
Little Mark.
2014 would start bad for T. Roy, because on the 9th of January he was arrested on a warrant, likely due to being out on bond after the previous legal problems that he had already racked up. However, about a month later, T. Roy would be released, and not just him, but also his right-hand man King Von, with Boss Top welcoming both home in mid-February. But at the same time, sending a warning to all of their ops, the O-Block's top shooters were back in the South Side streets. And the ops had reasons to be fearful, because only a little over a week after the murder of the innocent man Billy Sargent in September 2013, the O-Block and 600 Alliance had lost one of their biggest rappers, L.A. Capone, who was murdered on the 26th of September by members of 051 Young Money. The death of L.A. Capone, who is still considered to be one of the most charismatic artists to have ever come out of the Chicago drill scene.
On me, I fuck with dude, bro. Like I'm not even from Chicago or even from neighborhood or anything, but it I ain't gonna lie, it devastated me when I heard he got killed, because bro, like I really fucked with his music. Like his music was tough. And so RP to LA, man.
600 and O-Block equally hard. Together with the murder of J Money earlier that month,
they
the
lost
O-Block
him back,
600
yeah.
Alliance was thirsty for revenge, and that's exactly what they would get in 2014. Because in March, 051 Young Money's biggest rapper, Lil Mark, real name Mark Campbell, would put out a scathing diss track aimed at O-Block, 600, Lamron, and all of the other Black Disciple sets who had formed an alliance in the Chicago streets. This diss song was called No Competition, and it was named after Lil Durk and Lil Reese's diss song against the Opps called Competition. In the song, Lil Mark would diss numerous O-Block, 600, and other members from the alliance, and the music video would even include a clip of Lil Mark being on FaceTime with Lil Reese, making it clear that there was a deep animosity between these two.
What y'all on? Alright. That L shit. What's up, boy? What up?
What the? This shit ain't fun.
Out here. I'm on fast, boy. I been out here. I stay out here, boy.
The song itself made Lil Mark the prime target for the O-Block 600 Alliance to get revenge. And on the 28th of March, only a few days after the No Competition music video was posted to YouTube, Lil Mark was standing at a bus stop on the 300 stop of East 51st Street, which despite the street number, was about a mile away from 051's hood on the opposite side of Washington Park. While at the bus stop, a silver van would pull up and somebody would hop out, opening fire, hitting Lil Mark in the head and killing him on the spot, with graphic images of Lil Mark laying on the ground at the bus stop circulating on social media in the following days. One witness would describe described to the police how the shooter had an extended clip, but they were unable to see their face. Several hours later, the police would find the van used in the shooting about 2.5 miles away in the low-end area, but the van, which had Florida plates, was engulfed in flames. Once again, immediately after Lil Mark's death, while 051 members were paying homage to him, such as their most feared shooter 051 Melly, who would seemingly jump in the streets looking for revenge.
They said Melly was like that too.
Meanwhile, Von, T-Roy, and other O Block 600 members would begin dissing him relentlessly and insinuating their involvement. 051 were a violent with a lot of enemies, and people from O Block, 600, and THF were all celebrating the tragic news. However, even beyond the celebrations, one video would circulate seemingly showing King Von, T-Roy, and D-Rose from 600 together in a car driving past Lil Mark's death scene, all while police were still combing the evidence.
Hey, it's a 251st!
Damn, body down.
Oh, not those things coming up, bro.
No.
Tweaking, bro.
Body down. 51st. Gang.
Man,
Lil Mark would become one of the most diss-ops amongst the O Block Alliance for years to come.
I'm tired of smoking Tuka, so you know this one I'm finna be smoking at. It's called Lil Mark.
I'm right here kicking on Lil Mark. Dirty, yeah. Dang. Marky.
Like, bro, you know how crazy that is? Talking about you smoking on somebody. Like, this is how the trend started that you hear now. Talking about all these YNs talking about they smoking on something. Started right here with with the Chicago drill scene. Like, that's crazy, bro. Talking about I'm smoking on this and that. Like, bro, you know how crazy that sound, bro. Like how that will make like I said, make your opposition feel it, bro. Like make them even go to turn up. Like this is why this shit is continuous cycle of killing, bro. Cause with me, I don't feel the same way, bro. It make me want to turn up.
Meanwhile, members of 051 would insinuate that O Block may well have been behind Lil Mark's murder, like the rapper Driller, who tweeted that he would kill the whole of O Block just to bring Mark back. Unsurprisingly, people like Von, T-Roy, THF Twiller, and D-Rose would become the main suspects among Chicago drill fans. But officially, the investigation would seemingly move nowhere, and it still remains an open case to this day. But what makes the death of Lil Mark particularly sad and mind-boggling is the fact that he had seemingly been almost gotten by the very same people only days before his death, with people like Von and Twiller seemingly tweeting about having nearly caught Lil Mark just days before the murder. Ultimately, however, as the years went on, T-Roy and King Von would have less opportunities to kill, and having already caused so much pain in the streets, it was only a matter of time before T-Roy himself would ultimately be caught lacking, in the end suffering the very same fate that he had subjected his rivals to so many times before.